with all the wars that are currently going on in the world that are pretty hard for you and I to do anything about, I thought I would do a video instead on how to end the war within yourself, because if we take any advice from Gandhi and we be the change that we wish to see in the world, if we understand what it is within ourselves that causes conflict, suffering, and ultimately wars, and we can address that, heal that, integrate that, I believe if there's enough critical mass and enough of us are being the change that we wish to see in the world, we truly can have an impact. And that's actually the only way, because if you think about the other way, which is like to go through our leaders, and any leaders of any country right now, it's an absolute fuck up. Now, I don't mean any disrespect to our world leaders, but with all due respect, they are due respect, given that we have for millennia put our trust and faith into world leaders to guide us and lead us and represent us. And let's be honest, right now, there's not one world leader that I actually do respect, that I actually do aspire to be like in any way, shape or form, that I am inspired by, and that I believe is worthy of respect. All they want to do is serve their own needs, and they are driven by ego and fucking twisted satanic shit that we are now finding out about with this whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. And so what do we do? What do we do when we are finding out that the people that we have entrusted our faith in, that we pay our taxes to, that we vote for, and I'm not just talking about, in first world countries, I'm talking about all over the world. I live in South Africa, I'm talking about America, I'm talking about every single nation on this planet. I don't think there's any leader that I really think is doing well. Just look at the UK, they've gone through something like 16,000 million prime ministers in however long. And so what do? We can only do, it reminds me of the serenity prayer. We have to have the courage to know the difference between what we can control and what we can't.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
And we have to take back the control that we all do have, the sovereignty that we all do have, to make choices, to be more aware, to learn the truth, and to not buy into things just because, we've been taught and told. And I mean, if you think about just the enormity of what is actually unraveling and transpiring right now with this whole Epstein situation, and the potential hidden agendas and cover-ups and interconnectedness between all the things that are going on, it's mind-boggling. It's fucking crazy. And if any of the alleged stories and agendas that have come out regarding the sex trafficking that is behind it, right? Like all this reptilian satanic shit about the ball and I don't even know, all that stuff is, if everything that has been alluded to and now reported on by major outlets, media outlets, and I'm not just talking about your Foxes and your CBSs or your, the left and the right wing. I'm talking about, big YouTube channels, X accounts. All these accounts are reporting on a lot of these things. So it's not just conspiracy theories anymore. This is now starting to become mainstream knowledge. And I'm grateful that it's actually coming out now, because so many people for so long have been considered and thought of as crazy and, conspiracy, it's all the conspiracy theory and now what we are finding out is that it could potentially be as much, if not more relevant and legitimate as, the sky is blue and the earth is round, and that there's gravity. I mean, even the fact that there's gravity is questionable. If you go and listen to an Eric Weinstein and even his interview recently, and at the time of recording, this is July 2025, I would highly suggest you go and see his interview with Diary of a CEO, and then go and follow the breadcrumbs that he dropped in that video, and then go find them, and you'll see other commenters who went and followed the breadcrumbs, and you'll start to piece together a story yourself, that there is so much more going on behind the scenes and what meets the eye. And so not only are there wars in the world, not only are we, at war with ourselves more often than not, because we are questioning ourselves, our own sanity, our own realities, our own worth, and why we're even doing the things that we're doing if the world is such a fucked up place, and if it's, we're going to blow ourselves up anyway, and we're going to destroy ourselves, and if we can't even trust our own leaders, what's the bloody point, right? Not to quote Faulty, John Cleese or anything from Faulty Towers, he's my best. But honestly, like, it really begs the question, like, what is the bloody point? And that can create a lot of internal conflict and continuous suffering within ourselves and can perpetuate the war. So this video is about, like, what do we do when we start to feel that war within ourselves? And I think the important thing for you from ending the war within yourself and the wars out there is understanding that ultimately everything is interconnected, is ultimately energy. And that if we do want to change the outside experience, our external reality and our perception of that reality and our experience, our engagement with that reality, we have to do the change within because of the micro to the macro, right? Like especially when our leaders are this corrupt, this like entangled in ego and dark, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Because the more you go and fight the dark forces or like get enraveled in it and like be afraid of it or, either buy into it and it perpetuates it in whatever way, shape or form, either by resisting it, because if you resist it, it persists, or by feeding it and giving it all of your attention. Either way, it's going to perpetuate it. And so instead of that, what I would invite you to do is start to become more self-aware and start to become more introspective about what is actually true for you. Because the art of fulfillment, right, really truly being fulfilled, which not a lot of people are in this day and age, right? We've got wars, we've got all these conspiracy theories, we've got leaders that are fucked in the head and like pedophiles and like just crazy shit. And so a lot of people are not feeling fulfilled. They're not feeling the joy. They're not experiencing peace. And so it's like, well, how do we do that? How do you do that when everything else is like seemingly crumbling around you? And all of the, it's like this massive collective identity shift that we are ultimately experiencing together. So the one thing is, don't perpetuate the polarity and the duality and the divisive nature that is occurring right now. Even if in simplistic terms, we can call it like the dark forces versus the light forces, right? So I do understand the temptation in that, because I was this little spiritual light worker, like running around the world in my early days, right? Trying to like save the planet and raise collective consciousness and, ascend and do all the things. That's why I was like activating all my light bodies and Merkabas and things. And then I sort of let go of that whole need and perspective. And I started to just like settle into enjoying being embodied and being in this three-dimensional reality and finding joy in the daily practicality of just being a human being, right? Even though I know inherently we are multidimensional, infinite spiritual beings having a human experience, we are still human beings having a human experience. And so whilst it is, one thing to like wake up to all of these other worldly agendas and all the things that are going on, at this particular moment in time, like you still have to wake up, go to work or do it, figure out like a way to access, leverage and monetize what I call your unique contribution and enjoy your life and raise your kids and, be a good partner and, enjoy your family or your chosen family and just enjoy this experience that we are having and choose to evolve your conscious awareness, not get stuck in these revolutions. And revolutions only occur when you buy into the duality and the polarity of right, wrong, good, bad, left, right. My religion is better than your religion. My political party is better than your political party. My country is better than yours. Like all of these divisive that perpetuate the separateness, the seemingly separateness of what we are and who we are. We are one collective consciousness. We are source experiencing itself in an infinite amount of ways. And so any anthropomorphic religion, any like man-made religion is going to perpetuate the duality and the polarity and the separateness and the seeming divisiveness that is causing all the suffering within ourselves and externally in the world. So what I would really encourage you to do is step back and start to question ion, because a quest ion is when ions start to seek their complementary and opposite. And when ions religate, when they eventually come together, when you can collapse the wave function from a quantum physics point of view, so everything, light is essentially a wave and a particle simultaneously. But the wave function, right, the infinite nature of light is only collapsed. Things only become things, right? Me, you, like this, whatever it is, whatever we pick up. Any form exists only when there is an observer observing the wave function. That's the only time the wave collapses into a particle and becomes a thing, a form. And any form, right, it takes on an identity. So when we think of ourselves, we are all acting within multiple identities, which otherwise means like roles or different contexts. And so understand that you are all of those roles. Yes, you have all of those contexts in which you play. As a parent, as a leader, you are, whether you have hobbies and maybe you're an artist, maybe you're an athlete, whatever. Maybe you, from a religious point of view, maybe you don't believe in religion, so you're an atheist. But any identity is anything that comes after the I am, right? I am statement. And so just start to question all of those identities and whether they are ones that you literally ascribe to and are serving you. Because some of these things that we identify with and some of these identities and roles are ones that we've injected from others who we've put up on pedestals to say like, okay, well, they are better than me, right? Like leaders or parents, intergenerational, our history, where we've come from, our cultures, our countries, our religion, like our friends. And sometimes the things that we inject, the identities and the associated values and beliefs, etc., that we inject from those people that we've put up on pedestals are not actually necessary when we look at, well, what's actually true for me? And the way that you can become fulfilled is when you are full of things that are only aligned with your soul state, which is actually a higher leverage point of change above identity. And one of the hardest realizations is that what has brought you to where you are right now isn't necessarily going to be the same things that will take you to where you ultimately want to be in your future. And especially now as a collective, where we are all starting to question what is real, what is true, who do we actually trust? Now more than ever, it's going to be important for you to fulfill your highest potential, your truth, and align with your soul state so that you are operating from what you are here and designed to do. Otherwise, you will potentially be sort of sucked into and drawn into this otherworldly, lower vibration, ego-based, right, sort of reality where you are not evolving your consciousness. Because remember, a revolution, when you start asking questions, and you collapse the polarity and the duality by seeing, by transcending the judgment that is associated with good, bad, right, wrong, right? That's the polarity and the duality, right? Thinking that there's like one side is good and one side is bad. One country is right, one country is wrong. One religion is better than the other religion. Like all of those things are what perpetuate within you the suffering and the conflict and the war, and it perpetuates it externally as well. But once you see and once you transcend that the judgment and see that there is no such thing as right, wrong, inherently, right? Inherently, like would a soul need a religion? Would a soul need to be better than another soul? Like at that level of what your true nature is, there is no need for any of these identities, any of these values, any of these things. Because it's not about morality. Like inherently, we are all abundant. We are all love. We are all peace. We are all joy. We are all fulfilled. We are all whole and fulfilled. We don't need to go and fulfill all of these perceived voids that we ultimately, go and seek out in our human experience. And those are things like our values, like the things that we think are missing in our lives. So once you realize the art of fulfillment, once you realize that you already are whole, there is nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You don't have to necessarily strive. It just becomes like it no longer is about what should I do? What do I have to do? What do I need to do? What must I do? It becomes about what would I love to do? What would I like to do? What do I get to do? And it's really about claiming, owning not only all the parts and pieces of yourself and all of the traits that you perceive in others, because the minute that you perceive those traits, it's just an opportunity for you to own them within yourself, positive or negative, because the traits are not positive or negative inherently in and of themselves. They are just traits. And traits, if you spot them, you got them. And traits are necessary for us as human beings to continuously evolve our consciousness. So the revolutions within ourselves or externally are only caused by when we are perpetuating the polarities, when we are buying into either putting people up on pedestals and saying like, oh, I'm not as good as them, or projecting down onto others that we are better than them and they are not as good as us. So we are always in the middle, right? And the minute that you believe that there are people above us, there's people that are, better than us, that's an opportunity to own those traits in the people that you perceive are better than you. And when you perceive those people that are lower than you and not as good as you and you are above them, that's the opportunity to own those traits and to see where you are, the very things that you are judging, so that you can collapse those polarities, dualities in that judgment and that wave function. And that inherently creates light, enlightenment, and you progress and take an evolutionary jump to the next level of conscious awareness, where you enter the next illusion, right, of duality and polarity until you collapse that charge and that illusion, and then you evolve and you continuously evolve and evolve up and up and up and up. Otherwise, you just continuously revolve around and around and around. And that's essentially what we are experiencing right now collectively. It's just these revolutions of where it's just like, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. And then it perpetuates into more conflict, more suffering, more, and now wars, until we are either going to literally evolve collectively to that next evolution, or we're going to blow the fucking smithereens up out of each other. So I don't know about you, but I do not want the latter. I would rather become more of a conscious participant, really engage with the art of fulfillment, which is about what do I get to do? What would I love to do? What is my soul calling me to do? And for whatever bloody reason, for me right now, it's doing these YouTube videos and going on this journey towards documenting my journey towards monetizing my YouTube channel. And so here we are doing the thing, getting outside my comfort zone and transcending my own little revolutions of judgment and thinking like I can do it, I can't do it, I should do it, I shouldn't do it, cringy, not cringy, whatever. It's just doing the thing anyway and realizing that it's actually bringing me some amount of joy and making me feel fulfilled because it is aligned with my soul state and it is helping me to access, leverage, and monetize my unique contribution in the world on just a really cool scale and in a cool way. So if you are ready to access, leverage, and monetize your unique contribution, if you're ready to transcend all of your identities and really start to embark on this, what I call the art of fulfillment, right? Not an art of accomplishment and achievement, and right, you're going to achieve things anyway. You're going to accomplish things whether you want to or not. It's really about what would you love to achieve? What is going to feel fulfilling for you to go after and to create in the world. And it's probably going to be very different to what you've already done in your life. And especially me now, like looking at this is so true. Moving from a consumer to a creator is such a different journey. It creates such a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment, unlike any of the achievements and accomplishments that I've had to date. And so if you are a successful individual, but you're like sitting there going like, okay, what's next? This could be the very video and the very reason that we've crossed paths, because it might be time for you to transcend all of the polarity and the duality and the judgment within yourself and to start really asking, like, what is true for you and what is your next journey in line with your soul state? What is your unique contribution and how do you access, leverage, and monetize it now moving forward? So if that's something that you'd like to explore together, feel free to get in touch. There's going to be links down below in my description. I'd highly recommend that you subscribe because I've got a very long name and the likelihood of you remembering it is very slim. Hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload a video because, as I said, I'm documenting my journey and I'm going to be posting a lot more. So I'd love to see you. And here is to not only ending the wars within ourselves, but externally in our reality and our societies. And so thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so as we dive into this concept and topic of ending the war with yourself and within yourself, I want you to take a deep breath. I want you to really stop all distractions right now and just be present here with me now, because this is a really, really important topic. And it's, when I talk about the world wars and all of the leaders at the moment, like we are literally as a collective consciousness going through a massive, massive evolution. And we are on the precipice of revolutions. And the difference between a revolution and an evolution is big. And we as individuals, right? So from the micro to the macro, everything that we perceive in our three-dimensional reality is essentially mirrored and is one big hologram. We are all ultimately interconnected. Everything is ultimately just energy and light. And from a physics point of view, it's all just one big light show. And I mean, even our atomic structure, is 99.9999999% empty space, which is also mind-blowing and really strange. So just from a bit of context point of view, I had a near-death experience when I was 10 years old. I came back to life knowing, being, receiving, perceiving that everything was interconnected, ultimately energy, started questioning the meaning of life, why we're here, how it all works, etc. Went on a whole long journey. And long and short of that is that it was really challenging for me. Like that's when my war within myself began. And I was having a war. It was also the war within myself, but also the war with everyone else around me and society, because I felt like I had woken up and I felt like everyone else was sleeping and had no fucking idea what was going on. And I still feel like that too, to some extent right now. However, that journey took me, it catapulted me on a quest to understand the meaning of life, why we're here, all the things. And I went like super woo, right? Very spiritual, very went and activated my light body and my Merkaba and traveled around the world, doing all these activations and sacred geometry and blah, blah, blah. And I was certified in Reiki when I was 16 years old. So I was on a journey. Suffice to say, early in those years they were teenage years, right? So 16 years old, I also got diagnosed at the time with Lyme disease, which is also really interesting from this whole sort of biological warfare, so to speak. There's a lot of controversy around Lyme disease, its origination, it's whether it is in fact a just some random natural dis-ease, or if it literally was like a COVID type of biological warfare that was out of Lyme, Connecticut. You can go and look it up, and that's a whole different rabbit hole to go down. But basically, it also made me question the nature of reality, my reality, because my symptoms were I was literally could not. I thought I was tripping on acid. I was having flashbacks. And I will be honest, I had already been experimenting with hallucinogenics at the time because I was so interested and so fascinated with the nature of consciousness and reality and the survival of consciousness after death, after my near-death experience. And so I was constantly trying to access the energy and the realities and the dimensions and the interconnectedness. It was literally I wanted, to escape the matrix at that early age in my life. And psychedelics were one of the ways that, I was experimenting with how do we access it. And then eventually I realized that I can't do psychedelics every single weekend. So it wasn't recreational. It was more I used to sit literally in the driveway with my best friends and tape record our conversations about the meaning of life and why we're here and all our hypotheses. It was very entertaining. And it was very meaningful at the time, but it soon I realized that it was unsustainable and it was not very practical. So fast forward, get Lyme disease. So I now think that I'm having these flashbacks and I'm scared to tell my parents because I don't want them to know that I'd already experimented with hallucinogenics. And I was completely inundated with symptoms that went from just traditional flu and, feeling not great to being misdiagnosed for 6 months with mononucleosis, which is a chronic fatigue syndrome. And they had no idea what was wrong with me. And then I would forget where I was going. When I was driving, I would just completely lose context of point A to point B and have no idea how to connect those dots. I felt my joints were constantly aching and it was just this neurological fog that came over me. I couldn't understand things. I would read and then I wouldn't understand what I couldn't comprehend the words. It was a whole thing. Until I was tested, kinesiology, by an alternative medicine doctor who essentially discovered that it was, or tested for Lyme disease, and it was positive with the kinesiology. And then I went on this whole battery of tests for 6 weeks, and only in the 6th week with stool, urine, and blood did Lyme disease pop up and blatant. So then I was treated for that. And long story short of that whole journey is I was questioning, my reality and what was real and what wasn't, because so many people said, oh, it's just psychosomatic symptoms, meaning the symptoms were in my head and I was crazy and blah, 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 blah. And there was all this controversy around Lyme disease and that it's not a real thing and you shouldn't be treated for more than 2 years. Well, I was treated for 2 years with, strong antibiotics and alternative medicine to support my system. And then when they wanted to finally put an IV drip when I was on my way to college, a permanent IV, little temporary mini one for me to carry around with, I was nope, I'm done. And I was I'm going to heal myself from here on out. And since then, literally touch wood, I have not taken a single antibiotic or had anything into my body since then. So I've been very alternative, to say the least, for a very, very long time. And I've been exposed to lots of alternative theories, conspiracy, like even this whole, UFO agenda, Galactic Federation, reptiles ruling the world and ruling politicians, and all this shit that is now being, publicly reported on as that is like being that Jeffrey Epstein is like, involved with, and like other world leaders and celebrities around the world is just crazy to me. It's such a what do they call it when like you come full circle moment. And